Hello, thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers. It's been a really fantastic Isaiah. The work you are about to view was created upon the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are the indigenous people of New York. Despite tremendous hardships and being forced from their lands, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Munsee community. I honor this community, past and present, and am committed to learning more about the First Peoples who inhabited the land that I currently reside on. As a nomad, always seeking adventure in wild places, the lockdowns and isolation of the past several years had me thinking about the land I had been fortunate to share with my partner the past decade. This work in progress, and I should say it's actually research in progress, is my investigation into the transforming conditions of ice, water, and forest using improvisational approaches to video, audio, storytelling, and multi-species engagement. I draw upon anthropologist Natasha Meyer's notion of kinesthetic attunement, whereby through movement and mindfulness, I pay closer attention to this land, engage with the changes, and attempt to cultivate relations with the other than human beings that I share it with. To know ice, one must enter its liveliness. River and lake ice is often referred to as wild ice, possibly because of its roughness, unpredictability, and risk. I use long skates or skis to glide its surface. Winter ice plays an important role in the annual cycles of freshwater ecology. The formation of surface ice protects the underwater organisms from winter storms and wind. But what really interests me is far more aesthetic. I'm interested in the patterns that are created when ice, water, sun, and atmosphere collaborate. Each day, I would come out and witness a transformed composition of lines, textures, and shapes. I am reminded, though, of Aldo Leopold's notion of land aesthetic, where all the senses, not just vision, are exercised, and aesthetic experience is, quote, as cerebral as it is perceptual, end quote. Leopold's scholar, Paul Gobster, writes that Leopold distinguished between two types of aesthetic pleasure, one that's derived from a scenic aesthetic, where value is placed in how things look on the surface. In contrast, pleasure in ecological aesthetic comes from knowing about the land and knowing that it is ecologically fit. By fit, he means connecting to the whole, functioning symbiotically and in a state of homeostasis. How does one perceive the fit state? Generally, scientific information shapes my understanding of ecological systems, but I'm also interested in knowing the land through a non-scientific base, one derived from traditional ecological knowledge, personal attunement, and play as practices and pathways to this understanding. My attempt to document normal cyclic change in winter ice and atmosphere involved a red kayak. I wanted to see how long it would take for the kayak to go from sitting on the ice to floating in the water. Given the mildness of the winter we've had, I expected the kayak would end up in water in a few days or a week. To make this time-lapse video, I sat on the dock for several hours each day for several weeks, using just my iPhone. The process induced a slowing down. Time-lapse photography trained me in patience and subtle noticing. I noticed when the wind would change direction, subtle changes in the light, and the chaotic patterns of freeze and thaw and freeze again. Conditioned in the Western conception of animism, I projected human attributes onto the kayak, feeling its lonesomeness out there, being battered by wind and snow. It seemed paradoxical to me that a process such as time-lapse, which speeds up the viewing of environmental phenomena, invites slow contemplation if one chooses to stay with it through real-time capture. My experiment had to come to an end, unfortunately, when the large snowstorm was forecasted. I had to devise a rescue plan, as the thinning ice made retrieving the kayak difficult, and I didn't want it to end in the bottom of the lake. Uh-oh. What happened? Oops, nope.
On a eu une petite panne électrique. Yeah. Is it the red one?
Yeah, I'm going back now, but it stopped in the middle of, okay.
This is the first?
It's all in one video, but it's at the end, so how do I fast forward?
No,
maybe he can
no
do
button.
it. Okay.
Button is dead.
Button is dead.
What?
All right, I will just keep going, and hopefully it will play the rescue. I don't know what happened to him. Okay, we are going to skip. Actually, can I pause? There's no pause button. Yeah, that's way ahead, but okay. I can't pause it. There's no pause. All right, we'll just leave it at that. Affective moving, where am I? Yes. Affective moving is an intentional, mindful endeavor that can evoke a heightened sensory experience. Whether the method is,
Don't press the button.
Okay, can he pause it right there?
We can't make pause.
Okay. So it's all off. Okay. Canoes and kayaks as cultural artifacts have their own vernacular, and in my work have signified more than a transport vehicle. Kind of wanted to hear this story. Can you turn the volume up and I'll just skip my text? Okay, it's over. The muskrat is the central figure in an Anishinaabe recreation story about the Great Flood, where most life on Earth perished. Anishinaabe educator Deborah McGregor shares how Sky Woman survives and comes to rest on the back of a great turtle. She asks the water creatures to bring her soil from the bottom of the waters, so that she may use it to make new land. The water animals, the beaver, the marten, and the loon, all try to help her, but Muskrat, a humble creature determined to help, dives down and retrieves soil where others failed. Sky Woman's story is also the muskrat's story. The muskrat can dive for up to 15 minutes, gathering organic material to build little islands of habitat on the surface of ponds and marshes. My partner's luck in chancing upon the sale of this property was primarily because of the lake. Everyone around the lake views it as one of the most special in the area. Okay. Not being a landowner myself, drawn to more to mountains than I couldn't really relate. I'd seen plenty of pretty lakes. There it is. What made this one particularly special? Does property ownership make one more vested in caring for it? What is my role and responsibility as a non-property owner to this land? Could care for one place transfer to another? Robin Wall Kimmerer writes, by honoring the knowledge in the land and caring for its keepers, we start to become indigenous to place. My partner and I consider ourselves the current custodians of this small acreage in upstate New York. Once heavily logged and farmed, it is now mostly forested with oak, maple, dwindling ash, and intermixed with white pine and hemlock. Is it possible to attune to subtle environmental disruptions as readily as it is to the land we find beautiful? I decided to volunteer to sit on the Lake Association's water committee. Having some experience with do-it-yourself environmental sensing, I thought I could engage the local residents in monitoring the water. Not only to keep an eye on the water quality, but to gently bring up the problem of lawn fertilizer runoff. In my quest to attune to and cultivate multi-species relationships, I have augmented my body's sensory perceptive abilities through the use of visual and audio aids. In past work, I built low-cost environmental monitors to sense air and water pollution. These aids expand human senses to better attune, quote, our bodies and imaginations in to meet the rich sensory worlds of the non-human. By becoming sensor, writes Natasha Myers, you lean into sounds or activate the olfactory by sniffing out plants' alchemical utterances in an affective ecology of volatile chemistries. Plants, quote, have had a long time to figure things out, notes Kimmerer. Symbiotic relationships are never placid, writes Anna Lowenbrow-Singh, as she describes the multi-species interactions of fungi, bacteria, and tree roots. With all this vegetal activity underwater and underfoot in the forest, I could get a little closer and put my ears where my feet are. How can I do a collaborative project with the moss and fungi in my forest? I decided first to collaborate with my dog. And I apologize for the disorienting video here. While editing this video, my canine companion came racing from the kitchen to my office, drawn by, I suspect, the audio of rustling leaves, camera swooshing back and forth around her neck, and especially the pitter-patter sound of her gait as she moved up and down the trail. She whined and barked profusely at the screen. Yet, as you can see, there is only the camera's point of view. No dog, no other animal, but the sounds of her travels and sights that she already saw. I can only guess that it must be familiar sounds to her. Could it be that her ears, being closer to the ground, was hearing what the camera was capturing? Did she recognize the playback of her own sound making? My little collaborator has shared with the world her point of view, and she was responding to the reflexivity that video technology has always offered. And she was so good about this. I think she prefers to be behind the camera than in front of it. Thank you.